So I know this is a pretty old recording of her. I mean, it's at least a day old, right? At least. But I always find it pretty funny to watch.
To at least three. Put up the graphic of this. I think I'm gonna have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. No.
It broke her so bad that she called the show. Oh man. Okay. I know Miss Madcow will never see this, but I'll say it anyway. This is what happens when you get emotionally invested in your job. This is why I tell people don't do that. Um, of course, you're mentally unhinged, so anyway, so you wouldn't listen to good advice even if we were to smack you upside that ugly face of yours. Um, at the end of the day, though, it is just a job, okay? If you lose that one, you could always go, I don't know, flip burgers at Burger King. I'm sure they'd love to hire you. Um, I think it's just funny and slightly ironic that, you're upset that your company might be changing hands because you're the one who, or you are, and your ideology are one of the key factors to the viewership loss that led to the potential sale. Yeah. Uh, let's just openly admit that mainstream news is usually left on in lobbies at like hotels and airports because people don't know what else to put on. Now, you give me a hotel and it's going to look like a hunting club. You're going to have deer head trophies mounted on the wall. I'm gonna put on the an outdoors channel where hunting's on 24/7, or gold panning, or rodeos, or something, and it's gonna be a right proper hotel. Um, See, I don't have a problem doing that, and I know perfectly well that it's gonna detract from a lot of the save the animals crowd. And don't misunderstand me, I'm all about saving the animals. I have a dog. And I actually feel really bad whenever I have to kill something to slap in the freezer. Something that I'm not going to be able to do this year because I have other things that are going on. Which really sucks because, I wanted some of that deer meat. But it just didn't happen this year. Deer season's like 5 days from being over. We don't have the money to go for me to renew my hunting license, and to be perfectly honest, the weather this year has sucked so horribly that today was the first day of the year that it's actually been somewhat huntable for deer. I have been outside first thing. All right, so for those who don't know, deer hunting, the colder the better. Uh, it means that they're going to be out foraging until later in the morning. It also means that they're going to be easier to spot and pin down. Um, See, because deer here in Maine are nocturnal, and I'm pretty sure they're that way everywhere. Like they love being out at night because it makes them feel safer. Um, that's why, you know, that's why when people came out with the whole "you can't hunt at night" thing, you know, a lot of hunters were kind of bummed out because at night times when they're all out. Anyway, but yeah, so and actually in much the same way, uh, the nighttime of MSNBC and CNN is over, and they need to find a new owner. Their time of feeding off of leftist rage and hatred is over because it was a faux rage and a faux hatred that was literally conspired by a by an artificial campaign that was also fun, surprisingly accepting donations and putting talking points through to these people. Was also putting up the deer feeder, the artificial deer for the deer to come munch on it, and that's literally what it was. That's why I kind of rolled my eyes about the whole DNC situation, because like the DNC sets up the deer feeder by making all this faux outrage, and you pay them to make this faux outrage by giving them donations, and and that faux outrage benefited you by giving you viewers, and that's literally how it worked. Well, now the whole system's kind of falling apart, isn't it? You had a multitude of problems, namely the fact that the deer have gotten smart to the fact that while that is free food, free outrage at that deer feeder, it's a death trap. It's a death spiral, because then your ideology will drag them into the realm of crazy land, where most of them won't go. And I do say most, and I do believe this. Look, I think when you actually break down the Democrat demographics of how far left they are, I think you have about 10% at maximum of Democrats who are far leftists. Like the abortion up to and afterbirth kind of leftists. The crazy wackadoos, right? The ones that are going to go out and dye their hair nuclear blue because they have nothing better to do. And the ones that have that stupid septum ring that makes me want to strap a 9-volt battery to it. I really don't believe most Democrats think that way. I think they voted against Trump because Trump's the... I actually do believe, and if we're being honest about this, politically speaking, at the end of the day, what we really have is a political system that has benefited from faux outrage on both sides, but it's been more pronounced on the left. And, you know, just the fact that there you still have that only 10%. How do I want to say this? It's like they tried to power it off of the thoughts and prayers of like 10% of the population of their movement. Whereas on the right, it was like, yeah, this country's going to you know what, so we can't afford to feed ourselves. Now, this guy's a boisterous loudmouth and kind of a jackass sometimes, but he can get stuff done. So we effectively on the opposite end. Whereas you guys had a party that was feeding into the outrage, that was feeding into the media organization, that was feeding in back into you through donations, right? The right did it the opposite way. The right did the stuff that was the news, okay, and the news was informing the people on Twitter and everywhere else about the truth about what the right was doing. And the people on the right were the ones that were tuning back into the stuff that the actual candidates were doing, which in my mind kind of works a little better as far as a 3-point cycle goes. Now, sure, you have some people who did the inverse, and I would argue that a lot of it kind of goes, it's kind of a weird cycle that can go, and see if I can do this, in opposite direction. I messed that up. I know I messed that up, but my hand-eye coordination doesn't work too good in the morning. But I'm pretty sure that the left did more of what I said they did, where they set up the faux outrage. The problem is that you had people on the right who looked like they were going to do something and are positioned still to do something. And now we've got people like my current senator, Susan Collins, and yes, I'm calling you out by name, who are going to stand in the way of things actually getting done. So, I think we should absolutely primary you the next chance we get. 100%, you need to go. You've been a problem for the state of Maine and the rest of the country for so long, and how you still get votes is a mystery to me. Well, it's not really. I actually understand Maine politics. It's not because they like you. It's because you're the only viable Republican candidate that we've ever had, and every time someone else has stepped up to the plate, uh, Susan's loyal followers, which is like a 10% of the voter base, has been the louder, annoying part because they don't want someone who's not a rhinoceros in the Senate. Heaven forbid we should actually have a real Republican who actually supports gun rights and is pro life and, actually stands for conservative Republican values because she hasn't. I don't think she ever has. Like, once. In fact, I'm pretty sure if you look up the Maine Sportsmen's Alliance report card, I'm pretty sure she's either a D or an F. She fails that hard. Um, just on like gun rights alone, and she needs to go. She needs to go. We need someone better.
Who are you talking about?
Susan Collins,
And
our current senator in the state of Maine.
from what I was hearing, that's pretty bad.
I voted for her because I didn't have a choice. It's either vote for her or vote for a gun grabbing Democrat. So,
Makes sense.
and that I think is part of the problem. So, well, actually, it's not part of the problem. It is the whole problem.
You just
We
voted
never.
for the one that was easier on you, basically.
Yeah, basically. But that is the whole problem. We never get the people that we want. We get the people that they tell us we get. And it's like, but we voted for someone else. So now you're telling us that we get this person, even though we live in a different part of the state. And, when you don't get your way, and it's not some gun grabbing libtard Democrat, you scream up and down that the election was stolen or yada yada yada, or not all the votes were counted because the deadline for election day is literally the end of election day at 12 friggin' a.m. in the morning. And you damn well better have your votes counted by then. But you want to sit there and say, oh, but you know what? You lose. All right, get the fuck over it.
Butts are for sitting, not for talking.
And stop forcing these bad candidates on us.
That too.
That's really more what this boils down to. And the only reason I'm making this recording for YouTube is because we're so sick of getting bad candidates. Trump is probably the best one we've seen, and the reason the whole system is against him and has tried to rig all these people against Trump, and not just court cases, I mean actual voting population, is because the system requires these bad people to be in place, because without it, the system effectively dies. Well, that's not technically true. That's just the way that the system is trained to think, because the corruption has infested the whole system into thinking that it needs these corrupt individuals to keep functioning, when in fact you could swap any one of them out at any moment. You could actually swap all of them out at any given moment, and the system would still be in place. It might just look a little different. So, I mean, that right there is the big lie. If you want breakfast, you can bust out some bacon and I'll cook it here in a minute. Okay.
Thank you, though.
But that is the huge lie, is that, oh, you need Susan Collins. No, you don't. You just need it to be another Republican who actually does the job, stands up for the values that the Republican Party is supposed to stand for. Now, that being said, there are some things in the Republican Party that certain people would like to discuss about them dropping and how they think it's a bad idea. Well, when you're a senator for a state, and I don't mean a senator in a state, there's a difference. When you're a senator in a state, you're talking about the state government. When you're a senator for a state, you're talking about the federal government. Okay? When you're the senator for a state, you're going to the federal government. Issues that are state issues, like state taxes, for example, do not belong in the realm of federal legislation unless, of course, the federal government wants to try to impose a way to remove all taxes altogether, which would be grand, but also impossible. Because state governments rely on those taxes to function in general, right? And if you do that, you're effectively neutering the entirety of state government, which is a violation of the Constitution and the 10th Amendment. Um, the federal government doesn't. Could you turn that down a little bit? Um, the Anyway, the federal government doesn't enjoy that disadvantage, really. The federal government can do tariffs, and I have to move my mic. The federal government can live off of tariffs effectively because we import so many goods and we don't export any. Um, so, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
So, at the end of the day, the state does need that money. Now, the federal government doesn't. The federal government, like I said, can do tariffs on imported goods. Absolutely. Yeah, oh, sure. Your cheap $10 Chinesium purse that was like $10 is now going to be $15. Big deal. Stop buying stuff from China and buy American, for crying out loud. Go grow a pair of chesticles and go buy a purse that is made with real leather, that is processed here in the U.S., that is made with metal that is hand forged here in the U.S. Spend your money locally. It might cost you $50 to $100, but you know what? I guarantee you that leather handbag that's forged right here in the U.S. and created right here in the U.S. most likely going to last you a lot longer than that Chinesium BS, that faux leather that doesn't, you breathe on it and it disintegrates basically. So yeah, uh, but this leads to another issue that I'm mentioning here. The federal government does not have to cover abortion. And here's why. It's not actually a constitutional right. Nowhere in the United States Constitution does it even say the word abortion. In fact, actually, making it a state's issue is the constitutional way to do things. And the reason that so many people on the left and the right, I've heard this from pro-lifers too, and I kind of want to just smack the both of you. It's effectively we don't want to do the work. We don't want to go state by state by state and present our case the way that it's supposed to be done. When something is not a constitutional right, meaning it is not codified in the United States Constitution, and you could sit there and try to say, well, privacy encompasses medical privacy and it's a medical procedure. It is a medical procedure until you make it an optional medical procedure, in which case an optional medical procedure is not exactly the same now, is it? My tax dollars don't pay for your fucking nose job, so to speak. So at the end of the day, a lot of issues are better off handled at the state and local level than federal. Now, there's one issue that kind of is split between the two, and that is defense. Okay, defending our nation basically does fall kind of on the shoulder of both. While the Congress and president are the ones that can declare war on somebody, when it comes to national defense, there's a reason that each state has a National Guard. They're not just an extension of FEMA either. They exist so if there is a problem that the governor or the government in the individual states can deem, oh, we have an issue, they can rally up and go deal with it. And by the way, the federal constitution also enshrines the fact that normal citizens can do that too. We don't necessarily need the okay or the go-ahead from the government to do that. According to the U.S. Constitution, if there's a threat to our country, as private citizens, if it gets bad enough and if we decide to do it, We absolutely can deal with it ourselves. The problem is no one wants to do it because the way that we deal with it is the way that makes us look bad to the rest of the world because it's the thing that makes us look like a third world country. Um, I'm not saying that. All right, to be clear, this is not a call to violence. Okay, I am using this as an example and only as an example. Let's say the illegal immigration issue or the southern border that's been ripped open by the Biden administration and foolishly to try to collapse our country in many different ways. Let's say that turned into like an actual violent invasion from Mexico. Like the drug cartels finally went off their nut and decided to just outright attack like half of their customer base. Well, at that point, as U.S. citizens, we have the right to arm up and go to the southern border and effectively, put a stop to it. Whether we're trained or not is irrelevant. Just grab a gun, grab some armor, and go to work, kind of thing. Um, the Constitution, through the Second Amendment, as well as the defense of country, we have the right to do that. And no state or federal government in this United States has the right to tell us we can't. They can tell us we shouldn't, and that's important. They can tell us we shouldn't because we're not trained. And in the case of some people, that makes sense. It makes sense. Me, for example, I can walk a mile carrying all of my gear. Sure. Am I gonna be in fighting form by the time I'm done walking that mile? Probably not. Not now, anyway. In the future, I intend to be, but not at this moment in time. But people like me should absolutely, most likely, be warned to kind of stay home. Now, a lot of people out there will sit there and say, that's insane. There's no way that's possible. Actually, it is. Read your Constitution from cover to cover. And I mean really read it. And now we're going to end up with, a bunch of leftists out there saying, oh, you voted for Trump. You're a threat to the country. So we get to use that, right? Wrong. Through the Electoral College, as well as the popular vote, Donald Trump won the last election, which effectively means he is the president of the United States. So until a congressional panel finds him guilty of an impeachable, like, treasonous offense, and literally he gets convicted of it, because it's a two-step process. You have the impeachment itself, and then you have the conviction. The impeachment, you can impeach a ham sandwich for anything. The conviction is where it's at. Okay? And without that conviction, you literally are fomenting an insurrection. Doing the thing that you accused him of. So, at the end of the day, you really gotta be careful with what you say and what you do when it comes to that kind of stuff. Then you're getting into the gray area of, are we doing the right thing? But I'm going to wrap it there because I've still got breakfast to make. And I hope everyone has a nice day and has found this really enlightening. And if not, leave a comment. Like and subscribe if you like the content. If not, leave a comment. Like I said, have a beautiful, beautiful Monday.